Thanks so much. Let me start a little bit with the genesis of this project. It started actually as a Facebook posting. It was September of 2008, and I posted something about how I thought the Panic of 1873 was a better model. September 1st of 2008, you may remember, is just as the stock market was starting to tank, and lots of concerns about banks and collateralized debt obligations. And I said that Panic of 1873 was maybe a better model for understanding what was happening than the 1929, the so-called Great Depression of 1929 that everyone had been talking about. And a friend of mine who was a reporter for the Chronicle of Higher Ed said, you need to write something about this. So I did write this piece. I guess it was actually before September 1st, because it was published online September 1st of 2008 in the Chronicle. And I just sort of laid out some similarities that I thought. A sort of mortgage crisis at the center before the stock market happens, the way in which mortgage meltdown then through the interest rate is transmitted around the world. I talked about the sort of way in which, in some ways, the Gilded Age followed from the 1873 panic, the way in which people with cash on hand, like Carnegie and Rockefeller and others, were able to buy up their competitors fairly quickly. And I kind of stupidly predicted a few things that might happen if 1873 was a better model than 1929. And then they all happened. So I had said stuff about gold. I had said stuff about the cash on hand. I didn't realize that you can calculate the cash on hand for any publicly traded stock using Google Finance. And so a bunch of fund managers picked this up, and it was the Chronicle said it was had the most hits of any piece they've ever published, ever. And lots and lots of people. But there was this Nelson formula that was being circulated about what to buy, what to sell, and what to short in the financial. And it turned out people made a lot of money shorting things that were low cash on hand, like Chrysler, and buying things that were high cash on hand, like Apple and Microsoft. And so I guess September 3rd, I started getting calls from banks. First it was analysts, and then it was financial officers, and then it was fund managers that were calling. BlackRock called, and UBS called, and all these other big banks. And they wanted, among the things that they wanted to know were, they wanted footnotes, first of all, which is a shocker. They wanted to know where I'd gotten this information about steel prices and things like that. And then they also wanted to know if there was a history of all the other financial panics that they could use as a guide. And they said, the thing is that we have all these economists, and all they know about is 1929, and they don't know about these other panics that you're talking about. And you're clearly, what you're saying about this crunch makes a lot of sense, but we can't, we're flying blind here. We don't know what to do. So anyways, that's where the book started. And it was strange writing this book because fund manager, they flew me to different places to talk to these to give talks to fund managers to Hong Kong and to Las Vegas and places like this. And they wouldn't, I wanted a public presentation, and they wanted to ask questions, but they wanted it to happen in a sealed room, individually with the different managers, so that none of them would know what the other ones were thinking about in terms of yield curves or commodity prices or something like that. So it was very strange. I think, unfortunately for them, I learned much more from them than they learned from me. They used a lot of jargon that was totally unfamiliar to me as a 19th century historian, and I wrote it all down and looked it all up. And so anyway, so that's the sort of genesis of the book.